Welcome to Chapter 11, The Economy and Work. The economy and work impact a lot of our social lives. It can impact not only what we do with a majority of our time, which is working, but it can also impact what we purchase, how much we spend, where we live. It can impact relationships. So, in this chapter, just pay attention. We're going to go over a few pieces of what affects that and the history of some of the work as well. All right, let's get started. I want to go over the different forms of economic systems. We're going to limit that simply to uh, three specific groupings. So, capitalism, which when you look at capitalism, this is where people own things privately. These could be companies, farms, businesses, and they sell based on supply and demand. So, an example could be iPhones. People want them and always the new technology, so each year a new phone is put out and they charge at a higher rate. They are not controlled by the government in capitalism. The government is actually not involved, and there's a chance in capitalism for inequality, meaning some people are going to make a lot more money and some people are not, and the wealth is not going to be spread around. So you're going to see very different class systems. Um, the next one that I want to look at is socialism. So socialism has a combination, you would say, of government involvement and public involvement. So think of it as the business is similar to a co-op. So if you've ever heard of a grocery co-op where people invest into the company, it becomes sort of a public investment, and then in fact the prices go down or you get a discount with it. That's part of the co-op. So everybody's putting some money in so they can get some things out of it as a group, so the public. The government in socialism does work with redistribution. This is typically with health care, with some basic social needs that they may have. So that's going to be going on with socialism. What can be a challenge for them is with the distribution, this could decrease their market income because they're basically producing to the point to meet the social welfare needs of everyone. So they're trying to level it out and create equality. With the capitalism, they would say they're not investing enough opportunities and growing in ways that they could. But again, reminder, socialism's not about having one person gain more in a private company than the other. And there is some government involvement, but it's not only government involvement. There's still opportunity for private businesses. Then there is communism. Now, communism is designed by all government. You're not going to have private businesses out there. The government will decide on how the planning, how things will be sold, how it will be distributed. They're going to decide on products and marketing, and they are in fact going to eliminate classes. So we won't have the rich, the poor, the middle class. It's to equal it out. So again, this is government planned. Um, when you look at each one of them, there is not one system that is pure. So you're not going to see a country that's completely considered capitalistic. Capitalism. There's not one that's fully socialism, not one that's fully communism. So these again are ideas that were created, but they're not going to always be 100% to one government or the other. Now we can actually talk about the economy and work over a history of time. And this one's really important to me because I look back at some of my family history that I've known about throughout my lifetime. There's the agricultural revolution. This involves farming, living off the land, make your own items. This industry involves private farm owners, sharecroppers, tenant farmers. This was an area that my grandfather was part of. His parents were tenant farmers. That means they couldn't own a farm. So basically, they were renting it out and they were giving money back. But they were expected to do so much as far as farming and gathering or raising enough materials or items, whether it be produce or cattle or whatever, maybe cotton. The next is Industrial Revolution. This involves the ability to use machinery to create large production of items to be sold. People were employed for this. So we went from being on a farm and you sort of have your own autonomy and you're creating materials and you're using those materials, and now there's a group of people that are now they're switching from the agricultural session over to the Industrial Revolution. This provided more funds, more communities. I will say my grandfather's family wasn't that agricultural, but because of finances and someone became ill in the family, they moved to what was known as a mill town. And with mill towns, these were much like many other companies where they started generating um, items. In this case, it was working with cotton, and they were making materials from it. That was very big in this area, were mill towns. So these were communities where mill owners would build up houses all around the mill. They would have a mill store. They would have a mill doctor, um, so that whenever you needed these items, you stayed in that community. And a lot of people were given their income that way, but they had to rent that mill house from the mill itself. So part of their income would go back. And when they purchased something, such as their groceries they needed, then part of the money they did went back to that mill store that they just purchased their groceries at. So part of their income went back there. What happened is people started to become very dependent on that employer for a wage, but also the company's success to continue for housing, stores, doctors. If the company went under, then they would lose all those opportunities. You will see at that time there was a transition from, as a family, they're working together at the farm. And in some communities, as it transitioned to industrial, some children had to go work with their families to make extra income. But some, the question is what happened with that family unit? Did it change over time? So in that case, with my grandfather, they did move to the mill town, and the family all started working at a mill themselves. So it was creating enough income for the whole entire family, and so it was generated that way. And they lived in a mill house, and my grandmother actually lived there as well. But unlike some, her family owned a house there. So that was a different situation. We still have industrial companies. So that's something where they switched it in a lot of cases. There are no longer mill towns, but there are communities where people come in and they work at either a mill or an industrial setting. And when they're working there, they may live in that area, but they are not going to live directly close to the industrial system right there within walking distance. They may be commuting. The income amount has increased, so you don't have to buy at the town store anymore. You can purchase your items wherever you would like. So it, of course, is an opportunity for people to work in mills now, and it's changed over time. Another section is the information uh, revolution. This is often when people think of the tech system changing. We started to get technology involved. And going back to the industrial, you're going to see a tweaking of the Industrial Revolution and the combination of adding some of that technology piece to it. So the technology piece could be development of computers, technology, the internet. Even now, we're getting AI in there. This is part of the technology revolution. This can be anything from if you call 911, the information goes to the call center and then they put in the information and then it shows up on the officer's screen. So they're notified. AI, I just mentioned, banking systems. A lot of us do banking online or even teaching this class online. So again, we're all using technology and this can be used in the work setting. Even sometimes you have that virtual call with your doctor. That's part of our industrial grouping where it's changed over time. All of these change the dynamics of work, but how do they change the home and the social life? Think of it this way. Which revolution were we more connected in a community, engaged with the family, able to do things we enjoy? Does one have a better or worse impact on our health? These are just a few of the variables I thought of, and I would love for you to think of other variables that go along with this as well when you're looking at each part so you can develop a theory. Now let's say you have a job and you're at this job and you're being either overworked or you're just exhausted or you have a lot of things to do at home and you just don't feel like you're being appreciated. You feel like maybe you're not getting paid enough. And, you've maybe expressed this to them, your employer. Maybe they're not paying attention. So, as an individual, you're going to do what we call individual resistance. You're going to maybe not follow every order. You're going to do a little online shopping, or maybe you're going to maybe take a little nap when no one's watching in your office. Maybe your vacation days, you are going to take them around the holidays. You went ahead and booked them, knowing ahead of time, and maybe they're denied, but you still stay out of work. So that is what could happen as an individual. These could be things we saw during COVID where people they wanted you to come back to the office and people said, no, I will only come part-time back to the office and I want to work the rest at home. People started insisting on certain elements to be understood. So they were, in a way, creating a resistance as individuals. Then we have you don't like your job and you're seeing a lot of problems there and you're seeing that everyone's being overworked and underpaid and you start or there's certain problems and you go express this as a collective resistance. There are groups that you can express as a collective resistance and that's called a union. A collective group of employees, such as a teachers union or steel workers union, they help with negotiating contracts, walkouts, etc. We have a lot of those, and so they will not only negotiate contracts and walkouts, they also lobby for people as a collective resistance so that they will be understood, awareness is going on, and that the people can come to them as a group and not have to fight things as an individual. So let's look at the different ways that things are working in our economy. What changes have happened culturally and economically since international trade and exchange, otherwise known as globalization? Well, we have a couple of things. Most of the time when we first started out, we'd see shallow integration. This was where an item was totally made in one country and shipped to another to sell in another country as well. So think of jeans. Back in the day, jeans were made in the US and only in the US. They were made here and let's say they were shipped to an Asian country. They weren't made in the Asian country, they were made specifically here, and so that value went directly. Not one item was made in another country and it was sold, but sold separately. Um, the deep integration, with deep integration, we're talking about, think about it with a car. Cars used to be made strictly in Detroit. You got all the information there. You got your everything from your mirror to, your startup engine to even the fabrication. Everything was done right there in a plant. Now, if you're looking at a car can be made partially in Detroit, partially in Germany, partially in South Korea, and then it can be sold. So that would be called deep integration. What we do see is when it happens, a company makes part of the product, then they ship it to another to be completed before the shipping it to the marketplace. Some of the things that we've seen when that is happening is, for example, we'll see something and it says made in whatever country on the tag. That doesn't mean that it's made completely in that country. It means that it could be made primarily in that country, but it does possibly have other places that have worked on it. Maybe we got the technology from somewhere else to complete the actual car development. So there's different pieces of it. Now, transnational, which is another part, this is where they have locations that they manufacture and they sell in different countries. So we have Coke. This is one of the products. Coke is made in the US, and let's say it is made in France. Let's say it's made in Japan. It's made in maybe Venezuela. They have plants at all these places. And I'm sure they actually have plants in many more locations. At those plants, they're making the code, developing the everything. And what they do is they have that location and they can ship directly in that country. So they don't have to have it shipped to another country. They don't have to deal with trade costs. Transportation is less. And so as a result, they will have a higher income and they'll have a higher influence in that area where they're making the product. Today, a way of reducing costs for companies has been using sweatshops. This is often mentioned in the clothing industry. It's a workplace in which people are subject to extreme exploitation. They include below working wages, long hours, poor working conditions that may pose health or safety hazards. Standards are not there to prevent that, but they are creating the materials at a much, much lower cost than when they would have it as a regular employee that was outside of the sweatshop. Another way is called outsourcing. This could be a way of contracting out or transferring materials either to another country or to another company. This could be a call center. If you are calling after hours, maybe you get connected to a call center, or you're needing to have maybe your system with your internet fixed. You'll be transferred to that. They've made a contract with and outsourced it to another company to handle that, who will be representing them, but they are not owned by that company. Looking at these workforces today, has the traditional workforce, this can be hourly, salary, educated or not, but when you are hired, you are expected to stay there until you choose to leave or are fired. Then we have what's called contingent and alternative workforce. Those are the people who work in positions that are temporary, maybe they're freelance or they're contracts. This can include someone who comes in to help with a computer system development. Maybe it's a teacher that's helping with the finishing the year. So people are maybe freelancing with some media outlets, whatever it may be. This is an opportunity to fill some of those positions without having to hire either full time or to fill whenever there is a lapse in someone that works there full time. So I hope you were able to collect just a piece of the information here about the economic piece as well as the workplace, and how do these involved with sociology? How does your employment, how does someone that you're researching their employment, how do employers impact individuals or groupings? How does the economy impact? If you are in a capitalistic society versus a socialistic society, it's going to be very different. So make sure you're looking at that when you're looking at sociology and you're wanting to develop theories and research and you're looking at what's coming back to you. Uh, Also keep in mind, how does this impact not just your work life, but how does it impact your community life or your family life as well? Now, a couple of quick notes. This is our conclusion of chapter 11. We have one more chapter to go. Now, allow up to 48 hours for email response. I promise this week, it's our last week together, I am responding much quicker to this, and I'm checking it several times a day. So email me. Now, if you email me late at night, you've got to give me till tomorrow around 10 because I'm just not going to be able to get to it. Uh, the other is, of course, I can schedule virtual meetings with you. They're available. You don't have a paper this week, but you do have discussions, which you can go over with me. If you wanted to review the material, you do have quizzes on 10, 11, and 12, and you do have your final exam. So I'm happy to go over materials. I've had several of you do this as well as email back and forth, and I'm hoping that's been helpful for all of you that have done that. Again, we have grading, allow up to a week. You're going to have your final grades eventually, so give it some time. It has to go through the system, and I'm going to be submitting final grades through the system there. This week, all assignments are due on Friday at 11:59. I can't keep it open beyond that. We have to do it by Friday at 11:59. Grades have to be submitted to the college, so we had to cut it shorter. So please, before Friday, complete your chapter 10, 11, and 12 quizzes. Then you need to do a discussion. And when I say discussion, I want you to write out the answer to the question that's provided there. And I then want you to respond to someone else's statement that they put down in their what they wrote out. So again, a dialogue, a discussion. Lastly, you have to do your final exam. These can really change your grade. They can be very impactful. So make sure you look at it and make sure you take it. Even if you think I don't have but 20 minutes to take an exam, it's better than not taking it. So please take the time, take the test, and do the discussion. It has been a pleasure spending time with all of you. And I look forward to hearing from you again in the future. And I hope that you will join us with sociology in the future and be in more classes. But again, if you have any questions, you're always welcome to email me. Even when the class is over, feel free to keep my email and reach out if you need anything. All right, I will talk to you again in chapter 12.